And welcome to ONNtv's top story this morning. We're looking a little bit more closely at a situation in the Pea Patch where some residents, adults and kids, are all very concerned about a safety issue. There are parents specifically who are concerned about wanting a street light at a certain intersection, and the request for that street light went out as far back as 2004. So on her agenda, Winona Hutchinson, who's running for Ward 3 Councillor in the municipal election coming up October 22nd, is live in our studios today and is going to give us her perspective on it. 2004?
Yes, actually it's before that. So
really?
This concern has been brought up before 2004 because there was reports actually published that predate the late Mr. Rosewell. So the residents, and it's growing. The number of residents is growing in terms of their fear for their kids crossing that street. It started off with just a access egress kind of situation and safety, and it's been proposed to City Council numerous times. And they keep quoting the Ontario Traffic Manual, saying, "Oh, it doesn't meet the measures. It doesn't meet the measures." But the problem is that the measures are not always inaccurate to what's happening on the street. So do
the measures have to be updated, do you think?
Well, I don't know. We don't really have control over the Ontario Traffic Manual, right? Because that's Ontario policy. However, we as residents of Sault Ste. Marie need to look at it because it's a measure. So a measure when it comes to safety should still be looked at with respect to critical thought, right? So whether or not the residents want a traffic light or a three-way stop is, neither here nor there. They just want some sort of traffic control.
And what intersection is that?
This is at Pine Street and Pleasant.
Pine and Pleasant.
Pine and Pleasant. It's exactly at that intersection. You have the egress and egress from the Pea Patch itself. You have the traffic going up and down Pine Street. Plus you have the school buses that pick up and drop off from St. Paul's. So that's a lot going on.
Pine Street's active.
Very active.
There's lots of shoppers on that street all the time.
Well, what people fail to realize is Pine Street was actually developed as a relief from Great Northern Road. So now Great Northern Road is a very congested intersection, and now Pine Street is getting extremely busy because when the report was brought out back in 2015, there were certain factors that weren't visible now, such as the high school was built and then the number of students attending and the parents who now drive their kids. We are more dependent on our parents driving our kids than we were of the school buses.
Oh, wow.
Then you have the college. They're developing. They're getting bigger. They're offering more programs. Their number of students that are entered or enrolled is increasing as well. So all of these contribute to the congestion on Pine Street. And the concern that the residents have is that there is a very long stretch from McNabb to Northern Avenue.
So McNabb to Northern, I'm just trying to, okay,
yep.
Got it.
So they have a traffic lights at both of those intersections.
Yes, they do.
But that is a really long stretch to go without any traffic control, and we can't control people's behaviors. So there's a lot of speeding that happens. So when the residents were actually talking to the crossing guards, they're afraid to bring the kids across that street.
Oh my goodness.
When I was canvassing, I was talking...
The crossing guards are scared?
The crossing guards are scared. There is a grandfather who goes to St. Paul's every day to bring his grandchild and her little friend across the street, and he is afraid, and the crossing guard said to him, "Be careful."
Oh my goodness.
So we need to look at the critical part of this. That's the critical thought.
Wow.
It's not so much getting in and out of Pea Patch, it's the safety of the kids and anyone who crosses at that intersection. The elders, the kids, things like that. The proposal that the city has in place doesn't actually address the safety. So
they're going to widen the lane and make it a road?
So what they're doing is there is actually a green space that connects two streets in the Pea Patch. And originally, I would assume that it was originally built as a further development maybe in the future, but it's a green space and everybody uses that. I was actually out there watching. It's used daily by the residents, kids riding their bikes. It's also used by Mapleview residents. Because they can't do the wheelchairs up and down the hill into the hub trail, so they go along that path.
So they're using it like a park.
Absolutely. So when the city wants to take that away, they're destroying the neighborhood because some of the residents will be deeply affected because the road will literally butt up against their driveways. So
it's going to change their lives.
It's going to change their lives. It's going to change the value of their properties. You know, there's a number of things. It takes away that community that they originally purchased there. Then you have the Mapleview residents. If you create a road there, it creates a safety issue there probably because they do go out and sometimes they don't necessarily have the lucid, fully faculties, whatever reasons that could happen. You're creating a safety issue there. So for the city to determine that as a plan doesn't still address the safety.
Not to mention the cost of it.
Well,
wouldn't it be cheaper to put up some lights than do the road?
There was an inquiry into the cost. The cost for a light was estimated between $150,000 to $200,000. The cost for the plan that the city proposes is in excess of $600,000 and still doesn't address the safety issue.
My goodness.
So it doesn't matter. You're still going to have that traffic on Pine Street, whether you have it in or out through Northern or not. It's the safety part of the issue. So now also with Mr. Pino building his little shopping mall at the corner of Great Northern Road, that's also going to create more congestion, Great Northern, more traffic on Pine to avoid it. Like, there's other solutions that have to happen. And in my opinion, the role of a councillor is to advocate for everyone. So it's not so much taking a side, it's determining what is the best interest of everyone. And when you're using outdated information from 2015, we're now in 2018, and you're still proposing this plan, my question is why?
Well, you know what, it's interesting because you mentioned that initially Pine Street was designed to sort of, take some of the traffic off of Great Northern Road. It's doing that a lot right now. Because it has been extended from the high school down. It's very, very busy there.
Exactly, because you have the high school right there. So it's an easy access for people to go up Pine Street to get their kid to drop off at school, as opposed to, going Great Northern Road and then turning right. So the plan of extending that was great. It was a great decision.
Yeah, that was awesome.
What the group is suggesting is that instead of doing their proposed plan, take that money and help ease more congestion off Great Northern Road by perhaps extending into Industrial Park through the Sackville extension. Instead of extending Sackville straight to Lake Street, which we know is very expensive, can we not look at an opportunity to take the existing Sackville where it ends, look at can it be tied into Industrial Park there? That will relieve some of the traffic coming out of Industrial Park so it doesn't hit Great Northern Road. Right? It will also support the local businesses that Mr. Pino is developing because it'll be easy access for anyone that's going there. Easy access in and out of Industrial Park for the workers there through Sackville. And it will hopefully retain some of that extra congestion from Pine Street. So
makes sense.
I think it does, absolutely, but I'm not a city planner.
Right, exactly. So these are options that you're proposing should be looked at least. Now,
Correct.
so how firm is this plan? Is this a definite go-ahead, we're building the road?
Well, they actually had a meeting, and that's what instructed this next petition that's happening, is the residents are like, why are we still not addressing the safety? Like, this is over 17 years of people complaining, and we're still getting fed information that they feel is not the complete information.
They must feel like they're not being listened to.
That's exactly it. And then it comes, and that's why the latest petition actually claims the stewardship of the council. Council needs to ensure that whatever money that we're spending as a steward of the city, it makes sense, right? And is in the best interest of the infrastructure of the city and to move it forward and of the residents. So they're feeling, the stewardship part of that is not being met, as well as the representation, because in the emails that were back and forth, it was very one-sided. I feel. Well, as a representative, we can feel, but it's not our will that we have to impose. It's the council as it's.
That's right.
Do you know what I mean? So it's the language. So they feel like they're not being listened to. They're not being told the whole story. There's things that are missing. So once again, we're back at the table again about the pea patch, and we're getting, back pushback, saying, well, it's the driver's behavior. Yes, it is the driver's
Well,
behavior.
regardless of what it is, it's an issue.
But we can't control. I can't
Right.
control your behavior.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the role of the police.
Yeah, you'd have to stop every driver, slow down.
Exactly.
Right.
And that long of a stretch, you do have to have some sort of traffic control. Like we said, it's not necessarily a light. It could be a three-way stop, but something
to
still
stop
needs
people.
to be done. And I'm receiving, since this release, a lot of support saying, yes, this is something that does need to be looked at. Because the current plan that City Council has still does not recognize the safety issue, and that's what they're saying.
So before we let you go, tell us what Peapatch residents and even other residents who, you know, don't have that particular situation but have small kids and are thankful they don't have to worry about such a high traffic area. What can we do about it?
The first thing you can do is definitely contact your ward representative.
Okay.
Because I'm hearing quite a bit, this is not the only intersection in town. And you need to talk to your ward representative. Tell them what your concerns are. The more people you have, the better, obviously. Instead of a single voice, you have a group of voices.
That makes sense.
And I think it's encouraged. I think the representative, whoever it may be, now, later, whatever, still needs to take every voice and listen to them. They need to be heard. Their concerns need to be validated. They're their concerns.
You certainly don't want a child getting
No.
hurt. My goodness.
Yeah, certainly.
Winona, thank you so much for coming in. Always a pleasure to see you. Keep up the
coming.
good work.
Thank you.
And we'll keep an eye on this and let us know.
Absolutely. Thank
Alrighty.
you.
We'll take this break. More news on Top Story ONNtv coming up right after this. Good morning again. The Sue's broadcast community has lost a pioneer in our business. He was a master switcher and editor. He was a performer, creative, and promotional legend with musical skills and a huge personality. I was so lucky to have been able to work with Albert Jones at MCTV for several years. Art Osborne from the Sky Studio said that behind the glass in the control room, Albert had a crucial hand in creating memorable and award-winning commercials, productions, such as the Miss Bonsu pageant, remember that, and various Christmas specials, some telethons, news features, and the famous annual staff Christmas party videos. That one was before my time. I'd like to take a look at those, actually. Osborne added that many will call to mind Uncle Albert in his Mouseketeer ears as he hosted a kids show on CJIC TV for 3 years. That was followed by 5 more as Uncle Albert's Movie Club and a late night movie. Osborne interviewed the always engaging Albert Jones, and we're thrilled to be able to show you some of that.
Television in Sault Ste. Marie and all communities in the country was a very influential media. Younger viewers of this interview will have to imagine taking all of those social media tools, wrapping them up in one thing and calling it TV. Older viewers will remember the power of television initially in Sault Ste. Marie, and we're going to get to all that television stuff by talking to Albert Jones, who was there and made it all happen. Apparently he's coming in later. Yeah, so you'll have to fill in.
Get his autograph.
I don't know if he can still write. So at this point, I'm going to ask you to give us your full name, date of birth, and parents, and so on.
My full name is Albert Dudley Jones. What was the other part of it?
Wait a minute. Date of birth.
Oh, yes. I was born on September 9th, 1938 in Sault Ste. Marie at the Plummer Hospital.
Matter of fact, I just had a look at a card that your father hand-lettered.
My dad was an artist, and he did all of those hello cards and sort of thing, Christmas cards, everything, by hand.
And, yes, parents' names.
Parents' name. My father's name was Dudley Horace Jones. He was born and raised in Wales, but came to Canada at an age of 13, back when a lot of the youth from Britain was being sent out of the country because things were bad in Britain at the time. And my mother was born in Sault Ste. Marie of mixed parentage, that is race-wise, heritage-wise. Her name was Aldine Hastings, and her father's name was Albert Hastings. I'm named after Grandpa Hastings. Anyway, she had a varied background. My grandmother's name was Hansinger, which is a German name, and they were down in the Kitchener area and were people that came from they called them the Royal Dutch Royalists.
Okay.
They're not Dutch Royalists, they're Germans, and the German word for German is Deutsch. And people couldn't say Deutsch, they said Dutch. So that's how that Dutch Royalist thing started.
Oh, I should be writing some of this down. That's very interesting.
There's a test later.
Okay. So let's talk about your early days as a child in Sault Ste. Marie. What recollections come to mind? Where was home, the neighborhood? Give us a little background.
Well, we lived at 33 Euclid until Depression, and my parents couldn't afford the taxes, so they lost the house. How my mother did it and my dad did it, I don't know, but they got a house on 508 Wellington, took in roomers and boarders, and that was an old house, so the costs were a lot less, and ended up paying it off. And we lived there, which is beside the Arthur Funeral Home, which is now a parking lot. And we lived there until I got married. And that was in 1959.
What are some of your recollections, Albert, as a child in the neighborhood? Some of the names of folks in the neighborhood that you might recall?
Well, Scarfones lived right across from us. Of course, Jim Arthur and his wife right next door to us. And I got to know the people that worked there very well. Bob Elliott and Chuck. Chuck, what was your last name? Doesn't matter. I almost became an undertaker at one point. I was very interested in it because I saw all the stages of it, except the other parts that you wouldn't know and talk about. And one day I asked if I could go into the preparation room, and Chuck said, "Are you going to start your apprenticeship?" And I said, "Well, no." And he said, "When you're ready, come and see me." So I never became an undertaker. I became a TV personality for a while anyway.
Sure, there's a joke in there someplace. I just can't quite think of it, but we'll let people put their own joke together.
Nothing funny about it. But I'll tell you, those were the Chuck McLeod. They were he eventually owned that funeral home. But they were two of the funniest guys I ever knew. Bob Elliott is worldwide known as a carver of birds and other things. And Chuck McLeod were the funniest guys. They were always telling jokes. Not about their job, but I learned a lot from them. I learned a few judo moves, which I practiced on with my mother, and she called them and gave them shit.
Heck. Okay, good.
Don't do that to my son. He broke my neck.
What about kids in the neighborhood? Any recollections of...
Sure, Orville Halverson. He's my oldest friend, oldest living friend. He lives in the Sioux still. His daughter works at a local place around town, and he was just about 3 doors up. And then there was Jack Whistler, who was about 4 doors up. All kinds of people that I went to school with that I can't remember all their names, but it was a pretty good upbringing. At my age, 76, I was born the year before the war started, so I was 7 years old when it ended. And my brother was quite a bit older than I, and he was an Army cadet, and he wanted, with all his heart, to get into the Army and go and fight the bad guys. Then he started talking to some of the returning veterans who had no arms and things like that, you know. He wasn't so enthusiastic anymore. But it ended before he got in.
What about events of the day, such as the war, a bit of a backdrop to your early growing up?
Really embedded in my memory. A 7-year-old kid, you don't remember too many details about anything, you know, just generally. But the war ended in Europe, and we were all given a little Union Jack about yay big and a stick, and we were let out of school. Now, that's a big event for a 7-year-old. I'm out of school early in the afternoon. I come home and the streets were going crazy. The horns honking all over the place, and my parents met me outside, and then we went down we lived on Wellington, right at the head of Spring. We went down Spring Street, and the streets were full. Queen Street was full of people, bands playing, and my dad was dancing with strange ladies, and my mother was dancing with strange men. And I'm going,
what's going on?
Yeah. Oh, it was something. And that really stuck, and it gassed me where I was when they dropped the A-bomb.
Where were you when they dropped the A-bomb?
I forget now. Okay. No, I was in Detroit with my parents, and they had a Plymouth car with a radio in it.
Oh.
A car with a radio right in the car.
Yeah.
And there was a big announcement coming up, and I'm not. This is true.
I know it is. It's just
Why I don't. Anyway, there was a big announcement coming. Everybody gathered around the car radio,
yeah.
and we heard about this A-bomb being dropped on Japan, and the war was over in Japan. So now the Americans are all dancing in the streets too. You know, well, they did the first time too, but it was. I do remember that. I didn't mean anything to me as a kid, but it's stuck in my memory. The war ended after they dropped this weird bomb.
Take us through a little bit of elementary school those years. Any recollections of teachers or events or disciplinary actions you might have been on the receiving end of?
I was a pretty good student. I didn't do any bad things.
Save that for later in life.
Yeah. A lot of the people I went to school with in public school are still around, and I see them from time to time. Joe Hudson's sister, Donna, I see her quite often. She was later Donna Christie.
What school are we talking about?
Central, which is
okay.
now offices for the Board of Education.
And you're talking about the Christie dancers?
No, the Christine Camper. Christie Campers.
Oh, Christie Campers. Okay,
Yes.
all right.
They're still going. That's her son.
Okay, all right. And now into high school. What's the first recollection of events or
Well, I was a young man by then, and
20-something, wasn't it, at the time?
What's that?
20-something at the
Yeah.
time you're going into grade 9?
Yeah, I graduated when I was 37. And anyway, no, it was good. There was only 2 high schools in town at the time. The so-called Tech, which is a technical and commercial high school, and the Collegiate. The Collegiate was generally thought of as where the lawyers' kids and the doctors' kids and blah, blah, blah went, because they learned Latin, French, and different subjects. I wanted to be an electrician. Like my brother had taken electricity and specialized in that at the tech school, so I wanted to do that, and that's what I did. I didn't become an electrician, but that's what I studied there.
Shocking. Sorry.
Oh, he's going to start the fun. You want to start the
No,
puns?
no.
You want to start the
we don't have enough
Bob
tape on-
McDonald puns?
No.
All right, talk about trees then.
Leave me alone. See,
Okay,
there's
I'll
one.
branch it into something else.
You twig me off.
Oh, here, bud. Get to the root of the matter, Art. Quit
Okay. Okay, Albert wins that one. Duly noted. So high school, somewhere
spruce
in...
up your act. Don't pine away.
Forget it. Sometime in high
You go ahead
school...
and rub balsam on your wounds, you know. Never mind. Okay, go ahead.
Sometime in high school, I think broadcasting found you. You found broadcasting. What happened there?
Yeah. My mother, as I told you before, I was renting rooms and taking in boarders and whatnot. And one girl that worked there at the radio station, CJIC, was the record librarian. And she lived in our house. And I always was interested in that sort of thing. I listened to the radio for all my favorite programs back before we had TV. And she gave me a tour. I was a young teenager. And at the tour, I met a fellow named Fred Zimmerman. He was the all-night show guy.
Later went to Wawa to do radio there.
Ran
yeah.
Wawa a whole bit,
Yeah.
Anyway, she introduced me to him, and he said, "Why don't you come back?" He was pulling records for a show or something. He said, "Why don't you come back tomorrow night and join me, keep me company for a while?" I said, "Okay." So they let me in the building, and there I was on radio, running records and operating and everything else after a couple of weeks.
Now, when you say the building, what building?
This building,
119 East Street.
same place.
That
yeah.
we happen to be in now, right?
Yeah. And from that, I got a job in the television division in the Telecine area, not this particular Telecine area we're filming in now. This is the control room when I no longer worked here. When I left the business, this was the control area for that. Anyway, got a job in Telecine, and then I started switching video, and I ended up retired as the operations manager here.
Well, you really shortened up your description of your career there. That took about 30 seconds to go from telecine to retirement.
There was another thing that took about 8 years, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll get to that. For folks that might not know that word telecine, you better describe a little bit of that kind of technology.
Word telecine refers to the film room, where the film was projected, cine as in film, and tele as in television, which is far-seeing, or far-sight. The German word is Fernsehen.
Fernsehen, yes.
Far-seeing. Anyway, what were we talking about?
I have no idea. I think, telecine, technology.
And I started operating, and then I did every job there was here, except including sales. I didn't do any programming. I wasn't really an engineer, just some technical knowledge, block diagrams. So that's what I did at the TV station until one staff party. George Fraser and I put together a skit that we stole from Stan Freberg, the comic satirist. And I played the abominable snowman dressed in a buffalo robe, big buffalo coat, and George was the interviewer. Now, to be the abominable snowman, you have to breathe in while you talk. And it's really hard to do. And sometimes you squeal. And sometimes you hiccup. Anyway, I was the abominable snowman. Took off. We had a lot of laughs. And when it came time to get a local host for the Mickey Mouse Club, what, me?
And this gets us into the Uncle Albert days.
Yes, it did. Now, keep in mind, that's 40 years ago. Since I left.
As of this recording, 2014.
Roughly in 2014. It's roughly 40 years ago since I left there. I did a few little other things after that, but my program originally was the Mickey Mouse Club, and it was designed with a local host. And we'd make draws for things and everything else, and I wore the rabbit ears. The mouse ears. I was thinking TV, eh? The rabbit ears.
Yeah.
Mouse ears and the whole bit. And, it went for 3 years. That's what Disney did with the first series. And then we had some sort of following locally. And they said, let's keep you on the air as Uncle Albert, and we'll play movies. So the title was, Uncle Albert's Movies.
And what a wonderful time revisiting Uncle Albert and hearing him reminisce about the start of his career and how life was in Sault Ste. Marie when he was a kid. Such a character, lovely man, wonderful to work for and with. I'd like to say a huge thank you to the Public Library's Oral History and obviously to Art Osborne, who's a good friend of ours. And if you want to see the rest of that interview, it's actually available on YouTube. All you have to do is go on YouTube and do a search for it. That interview is an hour long, so there's a lot more stories from Uncle Albert. Albert Jones passed away on September 10th. The 23rd Annual Bushplane Days Festival kicked off Saturday morning at the Canadian Bushplane Heritage Centre. The festival ran from 9 to 5 Saturday and Sunday and offered model train rides, treetop adventure, games, crafts, and more. ONNtv was there to check out the action.
The 23rd, it's changed over 23 years a little bit. It used to be in August, then it got moved to September. It used to be strictly an afternoon thing. Now, when it was in August, it was in through the week and not on the weekend, and then we expanded. And now with the delight of the M&R being able to come in and show what the water bombing's all about, it has really enhanced our festival over the years. It doesn't get old. Every time you hear that CL 415 coming and dropping that water, it just puts your hair on end. It's just a really good thing for everybody to see that most people wouldn't see. That's how they're putting out these fires that are burning like crazy.
Cancer survivors and supporters gathered at the Roberta Bondar Pavilion yesterday morning for the 38th 38th annual Terry Fox Run. Walkers had the option to walk, wheel, or ride the 2, 5, or 10-kilometer route along the St. Mary's River. Event organizer Chanel Fall said, although there wasn't a specific fundraising goal, she was hoping to see numbers close to last year's $25,000. She said the Sioux Run hit the $600,000 goal for the past 38 years. All proceeds go to the Terry Fox Foundation and Cancer Research.
Loves Terry Fox. We learn about Terry Fox in school. It gets passed down. When I did not see him run, I wasn't around 38 years ago, but my mom did, and she passed that on to me. And to see all these kids out here, it's fantastic. As everything, it went so smoothly this morning, and it's because of them and our fantastic volunteers. There were probably 45 or 50 volunteers this morning and yesterday and in the past couple weeks, and along with the volunteers and the sponsors, the supporters, this event wouldn't happen. So
After defeating the Sudbury Wolves 4-3 in a shootout in their opening game of the preseason last Thursday at the Sudbury Community Centre, the Sioux Greyhounds played their second and final game of the preseason yesterday afternoon in a rematch against their Highway 17 rivals at GFL Memorial Gardens. The Hounds ended their preseason with a perfect 2-0 record, defeating the Wolves 6-4. With the game tied at 3 through 40 minutes of play, the Hounds ended up scoring 3 times in the third to go on to that victory. The Group Health Centre is still deciding what medical equipment will be purchased with proceeds from the Esquire Club's Catch the Ace draw. The healthcare facility and Big Brothers Big Sisters of Sault Ste. Marie are the designated charities for the lottery that is entering its 50th week now. The pot of cash that Group Health Centre Trust Fund and Big Brothers Big Sisters will share is currently at $941,000, $442 before expenses, making this the biggest donation the Trust Fund has received since it launched back in 1979. Siouxites and their four-legged friends pawed the pavement on Saturday at the Roberta Bondar Pavilion for the 22nd annual Paws. The event raises money to cover any expenses for the Humane Society. ONNtv went down to talk to the Humane Society.
Knows the cost of veterinary care, and typically every pet that comes through our doors requires some form of veterinary care, whether it's spay and neuter, illness, injury. It costs a lot of money, and we can't put them up for adoption until we address those health issues that they have. So that's where this money goes towards, is to enable us to find them homes, because without it we wouldn't be able to.